Coming up on the Get Lean, Eat Clean podcast.
One of the biggest ones is paying attention to your movement outside of your workouts. A lot of people get caught up in the stories around this type of exercise is going to burn fat more efficiently or all these small things. And if we zoom out, like the big picture is just move more. You know, most of us have sedentary jobs. We're sitting most of the day and that can have a lot of bang for your buck. Alongside that is getting some baseline of resistance training in, strength training, lifting weights. That is if there's one thing I could have someone doing, even if it's just 2 days a week, it's lifting weights.
This week, I interviewed nutrition and fitness coach Brooks Coleman. Brooks and I discussed his top 5 principles that he stands by when it comes to optimizing your health, along with importance of flexible dieting, problems with too much restriction, walking as a health hack, Brooks' weekly lifting routine, and his one tip to get your body back to what it once was. Really enjoyed my interview with Brooks. I know you will too. Thanks again for listening and have a great day. All right. Welcome to the Get Lean, Eat Clean podcast. My name is Brian Gryn and I have Brooks Coleman on. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Brian. Excited to be here.
Yeah. Excited to have you on. Been following you on Instagram, Brooks Coleman, right? And you're health and fitness coach. How long have you been doing that for?
Yeah. Unofficially, like 4 or 5 years, but like full time with strangers, I guess, for about 2 years.
That's great. And your company's DataFit?
Yes. Yep. A little bit of a data-driven background in other careers. And so kind of always like the number side of things and decided to kind of blend the two.
And what made you want to get into health and fitness coaching?
Yeah, that I first found the gym like around beginning of high school, had delayed puberty, was falling behind in sports, way smaller than all my friends, trying to get bigger, didn't really have much success and kind of just fell in love with the gym and training instead of practicing for sports. And then fast forward 10 years after that, started to kind of unofficially help some friends who were falling into the same traps that I had been for 10 years and the gimmicks and then really just started to find a lot of meaning in seeing that transformation in other people. So started to take it seriously as a career instead of just helping people out.
Yeah, and you post a lot of great information on your Instagram. Where do you find your inspiration for that? And like, what are some of your like main principles that you like to stand by?
Yeah, I think the main inspiration is truly just like all the things I fell into, all those fads, all those gimmicks, all those things like, you know, we say majoring in the minors sort of thing that don't really work for people who are busy with families and careers and really simplifying to make it something that's actually sustainable. Principle wise, you know, it's cheesy or cliche, but that 80-20 approach is huge for me. Really focusing and streamlining down to the things that actually matter. Most of my clients are body composition focused. We're not after like elite athletic performance or like stepping on a bodybuilding stage. It's mostly just like, hey, I just want to fit my clothes better, get some confidence back and feel healthy. So it quickly, you know, kind of dwindles down to those core principles of focusing on the things that get you the most bang for your buck. You know, if somebody hops on my Instagram, they'll see, you know, the protein, the eating more fruits and vegetables, the moving more outside of the gym, just getting that baseline strength training in. Very, very simple stuff that I think are super powerful. If you can get those locked in long term, you can get away with a lot more with other stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I think in the health and wellness space, like there's a lot of stuff that gets thrown around, like a lot of like diet fads and things like that, or things just to get viewers and eyeballs on them, right? Where people go to extremes. And that's what I sort of like about your posts. Are you sort of just continually stick by the principles and the basics? It's a little bit like, I always relate everything back to golf. Like it's a little bit like golf where you can get so thrown by like watching YouTube videos and this and that, but a lot of it just comes down to the basics, coming back to like grip, stance, and setup and things like that. And I feel like fitness and health is the same way.
Yeah, 100%. Like all of a sudden you watch too much YouTube or social media, and I imagine with a golf swing, you end up thinking about 27 different things instead of just, you know, getting out there and being consistent, or, you know, or something like that.
Right.
Like,
yeah, for sure. I mean, with golf, it's like focus on what you do best and just double down on that. I feel like that'll be your biggest bang instead of trying to chase that new thing. And I've come fall to this plenty of times. Well, in fitness, what would you say, like maybe top 5 principles or top 6 principles that you sort of find yourself coming back to when it comes to working with clients?
Yeah, as far as X's and O's go, one of the biggest ones is paying attention to your movement outside of your workouts. A lot of people get caught up in the stories around, this type of exercise is going to burn fat more efficiently, or all these small things. And if we zoom out, like, the big picture is just move more. Most of us have sedentary jobs. We're sitting most of the day, and that can have a lot of bang for your buck. Alongside that is getting some baseline of resistance training in, strength training, lifting weights. That is if there's one thing I could have someone doing, even if it's just 2 days a week, it's lifting weights. That's going to be the biggest driver of the shape of your body, not just the weight of your body. And if you ignore that, the scale becomes something that's very transient. So if the scale comes down and comes back up, you have nothing to show for it. Whereas if you get consistent with strength training, you have something to show for that, regardless of what the scale does in the short and long term, because then it just becomes easier later on to get that look you want. And it can even change your body at the weight you're already at, which is when we look at the literature, it's a lot more realistic to increase muscle and decrease fat at any given weight than try to lose 20 pounds and keep it off. And then from there, on the nutrition side, really eating that protein. I talk about protein probably every day on social media. It's that powerful. It keeps you full. It supports muscle mass. It supports body composition. And then with that, just focusing on eating more whole foods, eating more fruits, eating more vegetables before we focus on. I always like to focus on more of things before less of things, because we're all conditioned for failure in this space. We've tried things, we've failed. And if we only take this stance of like, don't eat this, don't eat that, it creates this scarcity mindset when there's a lot of low hanging fruit from just, no pun intended, just eating more fruits, vegetables, protein, things like that.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of people think that to reach their health goals or to lose weight, like they have to restrict. And I think we've come into this, like, I don't know, this sort of like the fads. Like, you have carnivore, you have people who are just restricting macronutrients. And don't get me wrong, I think there can be a time and a place for certain things, and maybe it can be used as a tool. But is it sustainable for the long term?
Yeah, yeah. And a big part to me is, how does this hold up when you can't be perfect? So if your goal is don't have any of this, it's very easy to get to a point where you're like, well, I had some, now what, type of a thing.
Right.
And then it's like, you're kind of lost, and that can really reinforce that all or nothing restricted binge cycle. And similarly, I completely agree. For some people, keto approach might work, a fasting approach might work, but the big thing to me is, like, a big benefit of that is not having to track your food. But the problem is, once you hit a plateau,
where'd he go?
You can't cut out more carbs because you already cut them all out. You
Right.
can't, what do you do? Just like close your eating window more. All of a sudden you're only eating an hour a day, like, which, some people do that, but it becomes a lot tougher to be flexible and adjust according to plateaus and what your body's doing in response to that.
Yeah, totally agree. And even cutting calories, like you said, fasting or cutting calories. I mean, I got into fasting probably 7, 8 years ago. I wrote a journal about it, was doing it for a few years. And like, I look back at pictures of myself, and I was just like so skinny. Like I know people are like, oh, well, that's what but like for me, I don't really want to look like I'm like malnourished. Like like I want to have some, because I resistance train. So it's like, I feel like if you look at like a track and field person, I know this, people talk about track and field, like, the Olympics, right? Track and field, how they look and how like a long distance runner look. And it's like, well, which one would you rather look like? So I guess a lot of it depends on your goals, right? I mean, and I'm not saying anything's wrong with running per se, and not necessarily even looking like that if that's how you want to look. But I also think that, you want to sort of know where you're at know your goals and then sort of tailor, what you're doing around that. Because I wasn't eating enough, and that was an issue. I wasn't getting enough protein, and I wasn't eating enough because I had a small eating window. And so, yeah.
Yeah, that's the huge thing. It's like, I've worked with like over 200 people now, and most people have trouble getting enough protein with a full eating window. So like all of a
Right.
sudden we condense that down to 2 meals, and it's like if you're not careful and you just hear about fasting and jump into that without the knowledge that protein is one of the biggest drivers of how your body looks, it like good luck getting enough protein in there. It, like, and once again, I've used fasting with clients, like if I've well with people, but it's always, hey, let's make sure we get that protein in, and then like you said, if it's someone that kind of has that history of maybe not eating enough, then it can be pretty counterproductive to their goals. But yeah, you're absolutely right. It all depends on the person. It's that classic. If all you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail. So if you use fasting with every client, like you're going to get blinders on, and you might not end up doing what's best for that person.
Yeah. And I love how you mentioned for your first principle was like movement outside of your workouts, because I know you talk about walking a lot. I'm a big fan of walking. Like that's a big part of my day. I mean, I have two dogs. I know we have one or two dogs or
We've got two as
two.
well. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So two dogs and, 3 walks a day. And like, that's a big part of like my sort of, if you want to say like my routine and my exercise. I mean, I just try to get clients to get out once a day, I think would be great.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. And it's like, talk about kind of killing a few birds with one stone.
Right.
Walking, like you're getting some calorie burn, but also you're getting outside. So you're getting that sunlight in, which can support your sleep cycle and your circadian rhythm. You're also, it becomes, I mean, at least for me and a lot of my clients, I'm sure the same for you, becomes kind of like that almost a meditative type of stress management tool.
Mm.
And the beauty too is you can piece it together throughout your day. Like, you don't have to get to the gym and get on you're way less likely to skip a walk than you are to skip a sprinting session at the gym.
Yeah. No, I mean, I love getting out early. No one's out with the dogs, and you're in Denver, so I'm sure you have much better looking hikes or walks than I do here in Chicago.
Yeah. Yeah. No, we love it out here for that, taking the dogs out. We usually get a morning and a night one. It's kind of a good like bookend to the day
Hmm.
to start and end on a peaceful note instead of being in that sympathetic just fight or flight mode all day, every day.
Yeah. Yeah. So it definitely probably the most underrated, like sort of like health habits I feel like people can start doing right away is walking. And what else would you say regarding resistance training as far as your clients? Like, are you having them strive to hit like 1, 2, 3 days a week, or do you have, or probably depends on the individual and their background, but
Yeah, we're typically having our clients lift 2 to 4 times per week. That's kind of the spot.
yeah.
If I had it my way, I'd prefer probably three or four. But if you're starting from no strength training, 2 days is like the jump from 0 to 2 days in resistance or strength training is massive compared to going from like 2 to 3. So that's a big thing. And some of my clients that are newer to it and we're working out at home and they've got crazy schedules. I have done it in the past where it's like 10 to 20 minutes, like 5 or 6 days a week, because that just works best for their schedules. So, but really that first 2 to 4 days is super powerful.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, lifting has been a big part of my life, and I've changed my routine. I used to be 3 days. Now I do 4 days, and my splits are like two up or two lower.
I like
And,
it. Yeah.
and that seems to work well.
Yeah.
I'm a big routine guy. What is your typical like weekly routine when it comes to lifting?
Yeah, so it depends what season I'm in for
Yeah.
sure. If I'm wanting to maybe, add muscle or the scale's going up or down, I'll try to hit closer to 5. But like right now, I'm in a phase where I'm kind of like I'm just going to maintain. So what I do is just three full body days, and then really
Nice.
try to use the other days of the week to get out and get some aerobic stuff in, get some hikes in, things like that. And that's truly not really for the calorie burn. It's more so for the mental health benefits, the aerobic conditioning, just like the general health stuff. But yeah, usually trying to keep like one day off per week to do nothing but the walks. And then right now, 3 lift, 2 or 3 aerobic, and I feel pretty good.
Yeah. Yeah. Like I feel like in the summer, I'll try to lean out maybe a little bit. And then the winter tend to put on a little bit of weight and maybe just increase or decrease reps, increase weight, maybe slightly.
I like it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. The A big thing I always try to highlight for people too is like once you build that muscle, it's a lot easier to keep it. So like
Sure.
if they're really trying to if you're really trying to change your body, go up to maybe 4 days a week, knowing that like it's a season. And then later on, if you want to maintain where you're at, you can bring that down to maybe 2 full body workouts a week and still maintain what you put that work in to build.
Yeah. And then I know you've posted about different routines. What about like evening routine? Do you have an evening routine and a morning routine that you like to do?
Yeah, I've kind of bounced around. Evening is pretty consistent. So after dinner, taking the dogs for like a 30-minute walk really helps. And then from there, usually reading is the big thing. Getting in bed and reading like 30 minutes to 60 minutes before I want to be asleep. And that is a game changer. One thing that's been big for me recently, I grabbed an app called Freedom, and
Okay.
it's basically like a VPN app that syncs between your computer and your phone, and
Oh,
you can set block times and block lists for apps and the internet or whatever you want. So lately I have one turned on, and the cool part is you can't override it. So like I'm sure I used to do like the Apple thing
yeah.
where it was like screen time, but then you could just click ignore, and it's like it didn't really matter because you're like in the
Yeah.
middle of something scrolling. So you can turn this on so you can't override it. So I turned that on from like 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. so that
Oh,
like
sweet.
the end of my day and the beginning of my day, I cannot be on social media or email or anything like that. And that's been really helpful.
Yeah.
Mornings, I've kind of jumped around a little bit, but it usually consists of I like to read. I'll read for maybe 10 minutes, get a walk with the dogs, and then sometimes it involves 10-15 minute meditation. I usually get 10-15 minutes in every day, not always in the morning, but that's been a big one for me. So I think I think starting and ending the day with some sort of down regulation, breath work, reading, meditation, walks outside, something that doesn't involve screens and that high energy can be super powerful.
Yeah. So I'll check out that app, Freedom app, it's called.
Yep, freedom. Yeah.
Freedom. Okay. And what would you say, like for most of your clients, are you focusing on sort of the fitness and nutrition, or do you get into like stress and sleep and things like that as well?
Yeah, we do a bit of everything, really. We've got, of course, a big part of what we do is simplifying an approach that's going to actually get them to where they want to go, and then you can't ignore doing all the things that's going to help you stick with that, because that really is the biggest driver. Doesn't matter how perfect your routine is if you can't stick with it. So focusing on skills to deal with discomfort and emotional regulation, dealing with stress management, those are really powerful, because really when it comes down to it, we're all stressed. Like is anybody going to say that stress isn't bad, or are they going to say they aren't busy? We're all busy, we're all stressed. We're not exactly built for this environment we have. And when you get uncomfortable, when you get stressed, when emotions are heightened, when something goes on at work, the quickest, easiest, most effective way to take care of that in the short term is tasty food. It's very effective. Like if you don't feel great, tasty, high calorie treat, it works, but it doesn't work for very long. And then if you rely on that in the long term, obviously it's going to work against you. So really working on skills to handle stress and emotion and things like that without relying on something like food. And it's just like anything else, like alcohol or shopping for some people, whatever it may be. Working on tools to just better regulate yourself is a massive part of long-term success.
Yeah, and where do you fall? Do you fall in a certain? I know there's some people who are like in, and you might not fall in a camp, but like the calories in, calories out camp, or I've had a few people on, quite a few people on. I don't know if you know Jay Feldman and some others, Georgie Dinko, who are like pro metabolic. individuals, and I've had all there and anywhere in between. But do you sort of find yourself falling in a certain camp? It sounds like you take more of a balanced approach. Do you monitor calories, or do you sort of just focus on having clients eat whole foods, or both?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, the calories in, calories out thing it amazes me how much is out there and how much arguments go around that, because, at the end of the day, that is what leads to changes in weight. But that's not necessarily useful all the time when we want to change shape of our body, because if we're only focused on that, we can ignore protein, we can ignore resistance training, and then all of a sudden, you're losing a higher percentage of muscle mass instead of fat mass. So I'm a big fan of tracking calories. It's educational. The problem is when it becomes a crutch instead of a tool. So when you're tracking, we always want to understand where it's fitting in. It's very educational to see, oh, of course it's great to eat whole foods, but it's a lot different when someone sees for themselves that, oh, if I'm eating my 1,800 calories and 1,500 of it is fruits, vegetables, lean meats, and like complex carbs, I feel a lot better. I'm way less hungry versus like fast food and these things. So utilizing tracking calories can be fantastic, especially when you have a weight change goal. But it's important to know, hey, if you can't track, what are you going to do? What are some tools to use on holidays, on vacations, when you're out to eat at a restaurant, so that you're not just completely screwed if you don't have an app on you.
Right.
So we do utilize it, but then we pair that with, the intuitive eating skills, the food quality, things like that. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I think that like tracking is important because a lot of times people don't even realize, first of all, how much they're eating or what they're eating as well. And it's also always good to get a baseline. Do you utilize like DEXA scans or anything like that just to see body composition?
We'll utilize we don't typically do DEXA scans just because they're more expensive, and what we typically do is, if I had a more advanced client, we might do that, but most of the time we can get a proxy for muscle mass with gym performance, with body measurements, with progress photos, and clothes fit. Those are the big kind of markers of body comp that we use. And anything other than a DEXA, really, there's a lot of noise and a lot of variability. So yeah, if someone's more advanced, I think it can be helpful, especially if they love the numbers. Like, I'm not against it by any means, but day to day and week to week, just focusing on crushing your workouts and getting stronger is going to be a great indicator of body comp.
Yeah, I love that. And I love asking this question to people that come in that, but what's one thing you've changed your mind on in the last, let's say, 5 years?
Great question. Let me think of a good one. I think probably food timing. I got very deep into more of the athletic performance and really optimal for a long time. And I was all about get your protein across 3 to 6 meals, get your protein and your carbohydrate and fast digesting carbohydrate right around your workouts, get your fat and fiber farther from your workouts, making sure you really kind of time that well. And in the literature, especially for more gen pop clients that just want to be more fit instead of step on a bodybuilding stage, if you control for total calories, total protein, and total fiber for the entire day, you're getting 90+% of the way there. If someone's working out first thing in the morning fasted, I might implement maybe a shake for them, or some quick carbs before they get in there. But most of the time, the limiting factor for exercise performance is not going to be the nutrition of that day.
Mhm.
So as long as we're getting those totals in, and that just really simplifies it. I've had some clients come to me who have that history of maybe physique competitors, or 6 meals a day, evenly distributed. And then all of a sudden they come in, they're like, wait, so if I just hit this, whether it's 2 meals or 6 meals or snacks, or just hitting it total for the day, I'm going to get 90+% of my results. Sign me up. It simplifies, it makes it so much more flexible. So I think that's a big one for me, for sure.
Yeah, not getting so caught up in the nuance of it all, because like you said, most of the people you're working with, they're not like competitive bodybuilders or trying to get on a stage. And And it's true. I think when you keep things simple, that's a much better way of getting results as opposed to just getting so caught up in the details.
Yeah, 100%. And with like tracking food, like a budget, if you're so focused on this meal plan that has you eating 6 times a day and you're going out to eat on Saturday and you eat your 5 meals before that, all of a sudden you're eating like way more of your calories before you get to this dinner. And
Mm-hmm.
then you end up way overeating. Whereas if you're just like, hey, here's my calories for the day, maybe I'm going to go a little lower on calories and higher on protein in the day ahead of this dinner or social event, gives me more flexibility. But once again, that depends on the client, because some people you try to restrict earlier in the day and they get super hungry and they're not very good at regulating and being okay with hunger. And all of a sudden they just go crazy at night. So
Mm-hmm.
it definitely depends on the person. But yeah, there's optimal and then there's realistic. So that 80-20 game is so important.
Yeah. Yeah. What does your eating routine look like around your workouts and just for the day?
Yeah, so I typically work out like later afternoon. So if I'm doing that, I'm not super hungry in the day. So I usually eat 3 meals a day. I'll have like a good smoothie in the mornings. I really try to load that up with, like, my smoothie will be like almond milk or macadamia nut milk with some spinach, some berries, maybe some like walnuts or macadamia nuts, protein powder. And that is great because I love starting the day off with high protein, high fiber, because that just makes sure I get those critical nutrients in, make sure I start off on the good foot. Lunch is usually going to be something small. We'll do some meal prep companies for lunch, and one that I've found that I really like is called Nutrition Solutions. I tried a lot of them, but this one actually has really great, like, the problem with a lot of them is they're so focused on macros that they don't necessarily get you like some good micronutrients. But this company is really good about including some good vegetables with each meal. So I'll do that, or like a Greek yogurt bowl, just because I'm not super hungry in the day. And then keep it flexible for dinner. So my wife and I'll make something, or if we want to go out to eat, getting like a lot of protein, fiber, good micros for breakfast and lunch allows kind of more flexibility if needed for dinner. And then if I do work out in the morning, I'll maybe do a protein shake with some like Gatorade or simple carbs first thing, like on my way there or while I work out. But
Mm.
once again, that's not a super important thing to be doing.
What would you say to someone that maybe feels like they don't have time to work out? What kind of advice would you give them?
Yeah, this is a tough one. So bottom line, I would say first things first, like, you need less than you think, especially if you're focusing on the right things. So if you're focusing on weight training, a total of like an hour and a half across the week is going to be way more effective than zero. From there, I would say take a look at your screen time on your phone, and like, because
Yeah, right.
it's like if you love Breaking Bad, you're not going to be like, I just don't have time to watch Breaking Bad. So making it simple, making it enjoyable, and obviously that's a loaded statement there, to make it enjoyable, because I know it can be tough. But in that realm of things, it's like, it's so important to find your values and why this is important to you, because that's going to take you a lot further than just getting motivated to look good in a swimsuit for the summer. So that's a big aspect. And then I would say, if you do simplify and actually start seeing results, that's one of the most important drivers of that motivation long term. Like, once you're starting to see your clothes fit better, you get stronger, you start to feel that energy increase, that is so powerful for taking you farther. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
it's definitely tough. And I feel like part of that too is there's a huge element to like that self reflection, like what's important to you, like, is
Right.
like, because
Is it a
like,
priority, right?
right, right.
Like,
And go ahead.
no, I was just gonna say, yeah. I mean, and like you said, I've talked about before, like micro workouts. You don't
Yeah,
necessarily need. I don't know if you know Brad Kearns. He's out of California. He's sort of mentored me through the process of podcasting, but he has a really good podcast and he talks about micro workouts, and you can do stuff that's efficient and get in and out in 20 minutes. You don't have to go to a gym necessarily either.
yeah, 100%. Some resistance bands and some dumbbells at home, you can get more than enough in. And then outside of the strength training, I know it's, the walks, get a 5-minute walk, like a few times a day, or get a standing desk with a treadmill. A lot of people don't want to be that guy, but it's, once again, if it's important to you, just do it.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a company called X3. Have you heard of the X3 bar? I remember using that during COVID a lot. It's just all bands. There's a ground plate, a little Olympic bar. And I use that with some clients as well. So it works out really well.
Yeah, awesome. I think I've maybe seen something like
Yeah,
that.
Dr. Jaquish. He's been on my podcast a couple times, but I think that he blew up during COVID, right? Because everyone was trying to find something to do at home, and this was small, convenient, easy, not cheap, but well made. So, yeah, I think COVID was probably the best thing that happened to his business.
I could see that.
The at home.
Yeah.
Well, this was great. What this is another question I like to ask client or individuals that come on the podcast is what one tip would you give, even though you've given a lot of great tips today? One tip would you give someone if they were just starting out and they maybe wanted to get their body back to what it once was?
I think the biggest thing I would say is that there's never going to be a plan, nutrition or fitness wise, that makes it easy forever. So I think a lot naturally with social media and everything we see out there, there's sexy stories around why you've struggled with this. And we all tend to have this feeling that like we're broken in some way. And I think going into it expecting it to be hard at some points and expecting failure is the biggest thing, so that you don't get caught up in this, oh, this is going to be the thing that unlocks everything for me and makes it easy and I'll never have to think about it again. That's not realistic, because we live in a world of high calorie foods everywhere, and we have a mind that drives us to move as little as possible and eat as many calories as possible, because it evolved in a starvation environment. So there's no one light switch that's just going to make it easy forever. Go into it with that mentality. Don't ignore the mindset side and the skills that will help you deal with discomfort, because discomfort is coming. If you want change equals discomfort. Your body's going to fight you. There are ways to make it simpler and easy. Like, I put a lot of stuff out about that, but it's never going to be easy forever. So focus on that self-reflection, that ability to face that adversity, so that you don't get caught in this program hopping, all or nothing mindset.
Yeah. Great advice. Yeah. I mean, you're going to have plateaus. It's going to happen, right? And there's probably going to be some discomfort with change, right? Anytime. So just knowing that going in and not sort of having these expectations that you're just going to float your way
Yeah.
to where you want to go. It's, for anything, whether that's, I always go back to golf, but it's like, golf, you always hear golfers say, "Oh, I got it. I know I got it." And then like 2 weeks later, it's like, God, I don't think I have. It's like, so it's a moving target. It's a moving target.
Yeah. Yeah. The top of the mountain is just the bottom of the next one. So
Yeah.
it's embrace that challenge. And I always like to point out to people, like, I just said, like, it's always going to be hard. There's always going to be challenge. You have two options. Like, you can avoid that as much as necessary or as much as possible. But what's that going to do? That's going to socially isolate you. That's going to keep you from going to friends and family's parties. That's going to keep you from doing all the things that really bring meaning to you long term. And keep in mind why you even want to make these changes, because I'm guessing it's going to improve your relationships. So if we're starting to avoid situations that challenge us because we can't handle them, you're kind of defeating the purpose of this whole journey. So instead of trying to create this life where you avoid all this, why not learn the skills to be able to be there without, self-sabotaging?
And I think a big thing that can help is just being around people who live that lifestyle.
100%. That's a great point.
Yeah. Like, I know you belong to a gym, sort of a heavy hitters gym, right? And I'm sure you go in there and you see these guys, you're like, wow, like, you see what they do, the habits, the commitment. And it's like, you hang around those people. If you keep hanging around the same people you hung around 20 years ago, and those habits aren't serving you, then that's probably the issue, is the people you're hanging around are influencing you in a way that's not positive. And you got to make sure you change your environment.
Yeah. Yeah, that's huge. Huge.
You know,
Environment is so much of this. Like, yeah, it
probably
will get
just,
hard, but yeah, go ahead.
I was just say you're living in Denver. I know you moved. I mean, I'm sure a lot of people there are very like, health conscious or like fitness forward individuals who want to get out and do things. And I'm sure that in itself is a motivating factor.
Yeah, yeah. Driving around, lakes, parks, you're seeing people out with dogs and walking and always moving. So it's
Yeah.
definitely helpful.
Yeah. So just move to Denver.
Yeah, that's the key.
Right. Yeah. Put yourself in that environment. Well, Brooks, I appreciate you coming on. Best place for people to find you.
Instagram is where you'll find everything. It's at the Brooks Coleman, or just search Brooks Coleman and you'll find me there.
Yeah. Well, keep it up. Love your handle and all the content you're putting out there. And I appreciate you coming on the podcast and sharing all this.
Yeah, this was great. Thanks for having me, Brian.
No problem. Thanks for listening to the Get Lean, Eat Clean podcast. I understand there are millions of other podcasts out there, and you've chosen to listen to mine, and I appreciate that. Check out the show notes at briangryn.com for everything that was mentioned in this episode. Feel free to subscribe to the podcast and share it with a friend or family member that's looking to get their body back to what it once was. Thanks again, and have a great day.